Hello.
Question for you.
Okay.
Over time, I've when we've been talking in therapy and with my previous therapist, you've both of you have noticed stuff that I haven't noticed about myself. Maybe because it's my norm, or I've just never given it any thought and stuff
Right.
like that.
Okay.
And it's been really interesting because I'm like, oh, oh yeah, I do that, and I've not noticed it. And I'm just wondering because I don't watch the videos that we do, not all of them. Sometimes I watch them just with this, well, not watch them, but with the sound, so or with just subtitles. But I don't sort of like pay attention to them because I'll probably just criticize myself and my looks and the sound of my voice. But is there anything when I know that you watch them all and and often reflect on them in therapy about what you picked up and stuff? Is there any bits that you've picked up that I might not be aware of about what I say, what I do, or anything like that?
Yes, there's so in the previous video, what we did was, and in other videos as well, you often speak about when you're referring to things that happened to you when you were little, and then you'll say I was either 5 or 6 or 12, and there seems to be the prominent years of you remembering certain things. So to me, that's I understand why, but to an audience, they might think, well, she said she was 6 there, or she said she was 5, or at the beginning of the video she said 5, and then now she's saying that. Which age
Mm,
were it? Instead of seeing it as from the age of 5 to 12 or 13, you were being raped. And so for you, as you're recalling certain things, you'll recall it at a certain age. Or some people actually don't. Um, what they do is many people, because they start to distance themselves from themselves, they'll refer to it as I was in year 2 or as in
mm,
year. So it becomes almost the becoming part of the egoic chatter in the world of you're less important. So I'll refer to myself as the year that I was in at school as important. Actually, not my age, but you refer to an age
mm,
and throughout. So when you're telling a story,
mm,
um, the other what you do. So some people might see that as a paradox, a contradictory of, she said that age or she said that age, when actually it's not. It's your
mm.
recollection of things.
And I guess some
Um,
people could think, well, is she telling truth then, or has she got it right, or is she remembering it wrong, or something? Couldn't
yes,
they?
yeah, because quite often we can feel an age as well. When you're a child, you feel like you're a big boy and girl until you see a child, and then for you, that realization of how little you are when in your body, um, your natural essence doesn't feel an age, but in your, within yourself, you it's how you feel at the time as
Mm,
well. So I'm a big boy and I can do that,
mm,
and then when you actually become an adult and you see how young you are, you think, wow, how could anybody do that to a child that small?
mm,
How could somebody damage
mm,
a human body? Well, um, and I guess we've normalised that as well. We've normalised in society damaging, uh, males and females damaging either their own body or other people's body, especially around sex, where they, have sex because this is what the way they think that's going to do it, despite the fact of the damage that they do to the person, and that they feel that their body is an object to be
mm,
handed over, um, because they're so desperate
mm,
for love or so desperate to be accepted.
mm,
And so that's, one of the things is the way we think or feel about ourselves, and
mm.
the age kind of comes in how
Mm.
you felt at that time or something that might have triggered you to say that age.
I can sort of like understand that, like when I'm working out ages, and I have to work out ages. It's not the memories are there, but not at the age. So I have to work out, like you've just given the example. Well, I were at this in this year at school because I can remember this happening, and I can remember this, or I can remember what I was wearing when it happened. So I remember I've seen some school photos of me that year and I had that outfit on. So it must have been. And then I worked back, well, I was 11 when I went to high school. So I must have been, and I have to work it out like that. And so the ages are sort of like picking up on certain memories that I can remember over the years, or like I say, certain fabrics that I can feel against myself, or certain images that I've got. It's like, oh, right, so I must have been in that year, or this. And also working out, because I was very young, and I don't know anybody, a child that age, you can remember dates and times of everything that happened to them, even something as horrible as that. So I can't say it happened on a Tuesday at this time, but my thinking about the environment that I were in, I, then it makes me think I must have been this old. And also my responses that I can think of, I can remember thinking certain things. I think that is a really young child that'll think that way, like about the body and about what was happening. I think, well, I didn't know how babies were made, and so I must have been so much young, and this, that, and the other, because that were one of the things that I thought about. I thought, and about the male and female anatomy. So it's like, right, I must have been this young and this young because by this age I knew this, and stuff like that. And also, I think I know I've been doing it, but I'm also very woolly because I don't want people to work out who it was. And so I will be not, I could be more specific about some events, but I'm not going to be, because it would make it more obvious for that person to be identified. And I feel quite
Why do you not want them to be identified?
I get quite worried and paranoid, even when not when I'm like when I'm talking to my family. I'm very, very woolly about ages. Like I've said to me, we're primary age, and that's as much as I've been specific. I could be more specific, but I don't want her to start thinking and start talking to my sister and putting two and two together and all this, that, and other. But also that fear of that person being exposed. So even when I'm talking to you, or if I'm doing a workshop or something for professionals, I'll still be very woolly, because there's part of my brain which is quite paranoid, going, what if somebody knows him? What if somebody's going to work it out? What if somebody tells me mum? What if something? So I'm still very conscious of keeping that person a bit anonymous. So I might be a little bit intentionally woolly if I think that somebody could work out who it was.
What's the fear of the consequence? What's the fear of what's going to happen if that people, like you say, your mum or your sister find out who it is?
I worry that they will confront the person, and then so that person will be brought back into my life more than they are in my head at the moment. They'll be brought physically back into my life, and there'll be that I've sort of made stories that, well, they're going to deny it, they're not going to say it, they're going to admit it, they're going to be, and then they'll question, are you remembering it right? And I just can't go there with that. So my aim, since my family and people outside therapy know about my experiences, has been to do what I can to make that person anonymous.
I guess then, you know, you have reported him.
Yeah.
So it's easier for strangers to know how people are going to, you know, keep your confidence.
Yeah, I'd say not necessarily strangers, because like when I've done talks and stuff like that, I'm still very either won't say, because somebody asked me directly at a workshop that I did recently, who was it, and I didn't want to say, and I said I
guess
didn't
as
want
well
to say.
because people aren't, you know, when somebody asks that, it's for them. It's not for you. It's not for how you're going to feel about that afterwards from, you know, being exposed and, you know, people being interested in perpetrators. And I guess the other thing which stands out massively is that, you know, the fact that you've told the police and your feelings around wording of things as well.
Yeah,
so
it's like I trust you. I trust therapists to keep confidentiality, and I trusted
also
the police.
But also for them not to do anything. You trusted that as well because you said, I fear them coming into my world. And that would have brought him into your world. But ultimately, you're trusting the law because it's not really going to do anything for you.
Yeah.
And so it's that where you've said before, you know, you're innocent until proven guilty, number one. But number two, which is a good thing, but it doesn't work, does it? Because the innocent have been still locked up, so it doesn't. It's just a fantasy.
And those who are guilty have been let off.
So it's not. It really. So I guess because you know about this in this egoic world, is that, you know, there are many lies in it already to start with. The law lies, and so when you look at certain things, it's like, you know, like I said, that it's illegal to kill somebody, and yet if you have a uniform on, you can do that, and you'll get a badge for it. So it's like fickle. So because of that, the rights in the world are less likely, or are less likely to happen than the wrongs, because you can actually see for yourself how you fear being let down and exposed to danger again.
Yeah, because like when I did go to the police, I went for reasons not about me. I went for reasons to protect others and the safety of others. So I didn't go because I wanted to make a complaint about what had happened to me, and that. So, and I wasn't able to get the reassurance that I needed from the police about keeping that person out of my world. So I sort of like withdrew and limited what I told them because they couldn't give me the guarantees that I wanted regarding confidentiality and such. So it was a really uncomfortable and distressing experience going to them because what I wanted to happen couldn't happen. But like regarding like in therapy and stuff, I trust that confidentiality is there, whereas with in the outside world, outside therapy, I don't. So even though nobody I know is at that workshop that I've just done or whatever, I will still be very vague because my mind will overthink about what if they do know him, what if they know somebody like that, and what if they're talking to somebody, go, oh yeah, I know that, and it's like, no, I can't risk that risk of that person being brought back into my life. So I think that's one of the reasons why I'm a bit cagey, or I might change ages and stuff. But I think more more so is what you were saying about the linked with certain memories, and because I can't remember my age, I have to then link that to things I can grab hold of, like visualizing where I was, what I was wearing, what year I was at school, what also were happening at that time, what I was getting for my birthday or Christmas and whatever year, and then I work around my ages.
I guess as well, it seems from what you're saying, you know, and as well from what others have said about, because like when we're born, we come here to find out our identity as a human being, but we're not taught how to be a human being, as I say. We're taught how to be a robot, to be a human doing. So from a very young age, you're separated and from your family. And the biggest thing for a child in their life that becomes the most important isn't them, it's school, is to go to the factory learning machine. And so when they go there, you know, it can be in itself a form of cruelty because for you, imagine all the children that are being abused, and yet school is being taught to be the most important over them. And yet, if we as an adult suffered a rape or anything like that, we wouldn't be able to go to work. We'd have to stay at home and heal. For you know, as an adult, that time, that's expected of what you do. But for children, because the children and they don't speak out of not being heard or not being listened to or not being believed and all those things that they're going through, there are signs that you can see when somebody's distressed. We all know, you know, more or less when somebody's distressed. The majority of us do anyway. To enough to always having to give a reason why. Why do you want to be off? What's wrong with you? And if I can't see it, and I'm going to give you a time limit to be ill. And then if you're ill for a certain length of time, you're going to bear a consequence for that. So already society, or the way we are society itself, it just reveals our own cruelty towards ourselves and others, really, because we've been brought up not to consider ourselves so much. We don't consider other people either. So we give everybody, in the invention of time limits. You know, that, well, you should be over that by now. And, you know, that constant, we haven't got time for this.
Yeah.
Because there are more important things in life, like working and paying tax, because, you know, the slave owners want you to pay tax. It's just that they have a different name for that.
And so, I know about like attendance in schools when I've gone in and done school assemblies. They're really interesting to be an observer at, because they talk about mental well-being and stuff in school and this, that and other. But then a big part of the assembly is, right, who's getting 100% attendance, who's doing this, who can have a treat for having so much attendance. And it's like such a paradox. It's like you're saying about mental well-being or physical well-being either, but drag yourself to school no matter what state you're in,
so you can have a treat,
so that you can have a treat. Or in higher education, courses are funded by the attendance of the students, because I've been in so the higher education, and it's like,
the more that you're robotic,
you might be infecting everybody with a disease, but come in because we need the attendance. You might be not able to function and concentrate because you've got something going on in your mind. And I know people with eating disorders, and I think, how can they do their GCSEs if they've got the voice like I've got in my head? But it's like, you've got to put that aside and you've still got to complete this. You've still got to be this. We still need this attendance and that kind of thing. And I think it's must be such a confusing.
Well, it's a lie, and it's a paradox, because here in the West, and I'm going to say that is, you know, from my personal experience, life was very abusive, and is very abusive, and it's full of people that lie. It's full of contradictions. It's full of all those things. And so I've never seen the best interest at heart being a person. The best interest is the people that own a business and that we work for. But other than that, there isn't. I don't see how can you have like here mindfulness and things like that. It just seems to be a paradox to have a thing called mindfulness here, and yet everything else matters more than you do. So you can go inside yourself for a little bit, but then you need to come outside because you need to come into the real world, which isn't the real world. It's a world that somebody else made up of somebody else's thoughts and daydream, and that we agree to. Just like when people want to be in control of other people, they have their own idealization, their own daydream of how that's going to be, and then people get manipulated to maneuver into that, and that's what we all do.
Because I know, like, I've said before in the videos, but I'm just going to say obviously, but it's not obviously. But I didn't say anything, or nobody around me knew I was being abused at that time when I was in school and at home. At that time, I've only told people as an adult. They never said, but there were obvious behaviour changes in me and issues with how I was thinking, feeling, and behaving, and how I responded in my relationships and all sorts.
So
and they were just shut down.
Exactly. So if society cared about a human being, then why is no one asking?
Yeah, it's like, I'm just thinking, I know when I was at school, I didn't get at primary school anyway, I didn't get the attendance and all like this, what I know they have now, and about being late and I think primary school children getting told off for being late when it's the parents who are taking them and stuff, but never mind. But
that's quite, just when you said never mind, and it's like, wow, that children are being complained at by adults, they're being told off by adults for being late. It's like, that is a form of abuse anyway, because
it has nothing to do with them.
It had nothing to do with it. It's out of the child's hands. Do you know what I mean? It's like treating children like adults when they're children. Do you see what I mean? And then bullying the child because they're not. So you're already inciting fear into the child, because it's like the child's then going to go and quite often when children get told off, the parent might go into their inner child and not say anything to the, I'm going to say prison guard actually instead of teacher, because that's to say, don't speak to my child like that. Do you see what I mean? Because the other side of it is where parents are left outside and children are left outside in the rain to sit in wet clothes when they go back in, because they're late telling them to come in. So we can do it our way, but we're not going to do it yours. And quite often, I think it's looking deeper into that when, as the theory goes by the Jesuits and Freud and things like that, of where show me the boy age 7 and I'll show you the man, or as Freud said, we're all 5 and 6 year olds running around in adults' bodies. And when you have a look at that, the voice that's chattering in your head is a 5 and 6 year old that's chattering, that's telling you can't do that, you're not good enough, and all of those things. That's the voice that the adult's listening to. Now, when you go to school, you're being taught by 5 and 6 year olds running around in adults' bodies that are complying and doing as they're told, unless they're not. But, that's the thing, is that so they're just doing what they've been taught to do, not looking at and saying, why am I speaking to a child that's 4 or 5 or 6 and complaining to that child about being late? If I had been a child myself and recognizing I'm an adult, asking a child to get themselves on a bus to walk to school at that age and get themselves up and ready without any consideration to that small human being that's been forced to come here against the will.
And you've just ignited something in me which I've just not thought of before. I have this image, I can remember being in the playground and me clinging to my mum and being dragged off. I know I've said it loads of times to you, being dragged off by the teacher, me kicking and screaming because I didn't want to go in school. My mum being upset because she didn't want to leave me, but the teacher saying, you've got to go and leave her. And she'll quieten down once you've gone. Well, of course I will, because I'm not being listened to. What's point in carrying on?
Yeah.
But yet we'll go, oh, they've quietened down once you're gone. They were as happy as a king. It's like, well, yeah,
How do you know the one?
because yeah,
So
it's
just
just
the
that they're
child just gets
quiet.
gaslit.
And that
don't
it's
they?
like, yeah, I did
They have
stop.
to-
I did stop crying when my mum went,
Yes.
because I knew it was pointless.
Yes. And I've heard of some horrific stories of, children being locked in rooms and all kinds of things when the parents gone if they don't stop crying or whatever. And equally, where they've been comforted, for that way, in that level of understanding, but still doesn't stop the damage, because you're comforting a child. We're still going to do this to you until you shut up completely and stop complaining that you're being forced to come here.
And that was an
against your
everyday
will.
occurrence for me,
Yes.
and I can't remember any comfort or anything like that. And yes, I did stop eventually, but it was because there was no point in carrying on. But I'd try it again the next day, because that's how distressed I was.
Yes.
To see if now they'd listen to me. But then when my mum had gone, like, well, nobody's listening to me. Nobody's going to come to my aid. So of course I'm going to stop.
So it's similar to that way, what I just said is teaching mindfulness is saying, how can you teach mindfulness to people that aren't, the very, the very model that we work under is about going against human beings. So how can you have, how come in the workplace, I've heard this, how come in the workplace can we be more mindful? The very construct that you've built is to go against human beings. So you can, you can try it a little bit, but it's not really going to work that well, because it's like, oh, well, it's like saying to somebody, I'm going to whip you, but I'll dress your wounds when I've finished. It's just it doesn't make sense to, why aren't you, you're having a little bit of this and a little bit of that here, because, that's what's going on in your world. So yeah, but ultimately the conversation, has opened a can of worms from just the way that, the ages and things. Are there any other questions about the way that?
I guess I find it interesting, because I didn't notice that I sort of knew that I was being like a bit woolly.
What do you?
But I didn't sort of like, I didn't understand like, and link it to remembering certain bits and why and stuff.
What does a bit woolly mean? Sorry,
it means that I'm not specific. I'm not
right.
Like I could sort of say, right, I'm not going to say to my mum, I was this age when it started, I was this age when it stopped, because that would give too much information.
As well, you might not know the age because there was too much going on for you to, to even remember those things.
Yeah.
I guess as well, when you asked it, and I said that your age changes, one, our body language as well, the body language change. And sometimes the other thing is the way you sit. And it's like, do you see how you're sitting now? It's like you look like you're protecting yourself. And sometimes when you sit with your leg up, it looks, it might look harsh, it looks relaxed, but actually your leg's protecting. So it's how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Because you're literally squeezing everything. I can see you doing that. But how are you feeling when you have these conversations? Would you say, from that observation, I feel like I'm protecting myself, or actually I'm not?
I think I am, but that's something I don't realise I'm doing it till it's highlighted. It was highlighted by my previous therapist, and I thought I thought that had slightly changed over time, but I guess it hasn't, because I just automatically do it. Sit like this, or sit with my leg under me like that, and even
your hands, you just realise what
and even like in meetings when I were at work, I'd sit like this. I guess I've carried on doing it, even though it were brought to my awareness. But I don't have to think how I sit. I just sit. Going back to, it's just made me think about something about being little and about being at school. And it's like, when did this start? When?
Are you big
I
now?
don't know.
Are you refer to yourself as little? Do you feel big now? You say when you say?
No, I think when I say that when I was little, it seems that I can disconnect from it. It's like another person. I'm
Like
talking
a past
about
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like when I was little refers to it.
Yes.
My experiences when that abuse was happening.
So when you think about it, then you know in the 5 and 6 year old. So what that means is when you say to people you're 5 and 6 year old, lots of people are running around in adults' bodies. People, it will just bypass a lot of people and go, all right, yeah, okay. So, but ultimately, you can't bypass it really when you look into it, because it's like you become, let's use Hawkins levels of consciousness. In Hawkins levels of consciousness, the bottom level of consciousness is called hell. And so when we're in hell, what we do is we blame, we hold shame, we hold criticisms within ourselves about ourselves and others. It's quite nasty in hell. People, you know, do all nasty things there. We hold embarrassment about ourselves. We hold fear. We hold all those awful things that we hold. And so the voice, the egoic voice, the chattering voice in your head is the hell consciousness. And so what it's saying is that is your 5 and 6 year old, or as the Jesuits say, the 7-year-old, and who is talking. And that's the one that says, when you want so, you can't have that. You're not good enough for that. Or, you know, you get the feeling like some people, when they go to university, feel like an intruder. You're an intruder. You don't belong here. You're not brainy enough. I mean, you know, and it's like these odd things that we do, like people. So when you take something literal, let's take it literal. When somebody wants, say, like you want more muscles, and people, or you want protein and you want muscles in it, what will I do? And I call it a dead body, but the, you know, a dead mutated body that's been abused. But what people do is to make things more civilized. That's why the word civilized was invented. So you just to mask human beings' evil that's in their consciousness. And so what we tend to do is we'll rename things like meat. We're going to eat meat, and that will give us more muscle. It don't kind of make sense, because do we eat animals' brains to get more brainy then? Does that, do you see what I mean? So I don't get it. I don't get, you know, well, the biggest thing that you're going to do is eat a dead body, yeah, to get more muscle, and you're going to eat a dead brain out of the dead body to get brainier. Do we need to eat all these dead things to get more of what we are? Do you see what I mean? Just doesn't make sense, does it? And so, you know, when you think about what we do in this young voice that says these kind of things, in that level of L consciousness, it's not very pleasant down there. And that's where we do not very pleasant things to ourselves and others. And so in that level of consciousness, we see that as the young self, the young 5 and 6 year old. Now, your inner child wants to keep you safe, but it's just what it learned. And you're telling me, what did I learn about me when I was that age? Well, I learned, and a child's world as well, to keep itself safe, it likes to be in a little box. It likes routine. It likes to know everything what's happening. It doesn't really like surprises. So when your child is young, what the child do? Oh, how many times do we have to watch this same program over and over and over again? And when adults want to feel safe, they might go back. They love to go back to the olden days. Do you see what I mean? Because it seemed safer then. It wasn't, but it seemed like that because in this little prison box, if we do this, I know what's coming from this film. Like you, I know what's coming from that film. So I do things repeated over and over again. I eat the same safe foods over and over again, and that's what I do. So who's running the show in my adult body? For the majority of us, it's our child.
And I'm just
that's
thinking of
saying,
our child sat the
yes,
same when you had to sit cross-legged at school.
yes,
I hated it in assembly, and I'd pull my jumper down and I'd sit and hold
yes,
like this because
yes.
I couldn't.
Because you're
I
protecting
can't
yourself.
even do it now. I can't even put my hands on my knees
Yes,
and have that area exposed.
exactly.
I can't.
So it's that way you become the adult. And you can see for many people, it's like Sunday lunch. Everything's like Sunday lunch. Do you see what I mean? That we pass things down to each other and then we're told certain stories about them that aren't true. But when you look at the reality and you say, if somebody says something nasty, that's themselves pushed out. I don't like seeing, I hate when she does that because she reminds me of who I am. That's what it is, because the world's a mirror to you pushed out. So when you look and you say, oh, is that what the 5 and 6 year olds doing? It's like, yes, that's what it means. It means that whatever you're doing in the hell consciousness comes from the nasty things you were taught when you were young and what you're repeating as an adult. And if you're listening to the voice in your head and it's negative, it's your inner child that's talking to you, that's trying to keep you safe. But it's not when you say, well, I don't need fear now. I'm an adult. I don't need fear. But it's fear of being in trouble, fear of not complying, fear of all those things. And so when you wake up to that, that's the voice in your head that's judging, that's doing all those things. That's, when you see society how it is, or it used to be called insanity, and now it's called mental illness.
I'm just thinking about all things that I do, which are exactly the same as what I did when I was 5 and 6.
Yes, when you see,
but I didn't realise it.
Yes, because that's what the majority of people are doing, and so when you see people, behaving in a certain way, and then we have beliefs in this, so we have beliefs in people that wear costumes, just like we did when we were children, because we were taught that person's a doctor, they're very important because they're wearing a white coat, and that person's a policeman, and this is what they do, and that person, and then everybody, when they grow up, they go into the role. You go into your little acting role. Do you see what I mean? And we believe, oh, these people know everything. No, they don't. No, they don't. It's just because they have a uniform on, just like a costume, like anybody with a costume on. If I see somebody in a clown's costume, I might be scared because they have a story behind that. If I see somebody dressed as a policeman in that car, I might behave in a certain way because they have a belief, or whatever your experience is around that person or what you've been told. So, but we don't often see them as being the child in the adult's body because we've been told that they're almost superior now. Now I need to go into this active role. Oh, you're not being professional. Like somebody said to me, you can't use that email address. It's not professional enough. Like, no, it's not. It's human. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm coming to you as a human being. Professional is just a label. It's just a practice. I practice something, and I give you what I practice. But I'm still going to be a human being. So I don't need a label to tell me who to be towards you. I will be that way authentically towards you. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because then quite often when somebody has a label, you're going to have an expectation. And when you don't get that expectation of what you expect, then you might be disappointed. So quite often, like you went to the police, and because you were disappointed, well, this might be exposed, and police are supposed to keep you safe, but they're telling me that they can't keep me safe. Or I might go to a doctor and I might be spoken to like crap. I don't expect from a
Yeah.
doctor. I'm just going to say like
Yeah,
crap.
yeah, because that's been my recent experiences.
That's
But
been
yeah,
and so and I can validate that as well. So it's
Yeah.
like so it's things like that. So I'm just going to be human to watch.
yeah.
Yeah. How do you how are you feeling?
It's given me a lot to think about because it's enlightening when you remember and notice things in yourself, but also remembering that other people are doing exactly the same. I think
Yes.
it's easy to forget that.
It is easy to forget that
Yeah.
when the majority of people that you're around are
Yeah.
doing the same thing,
Yeah.
that we can fall into that. It's called falling asleep, and then
Yeah.
what the Buddhists call awakening to
And
yourself.
just it becomes the norm.
Yeah, it becomes the norm. So there are things in society as the sickness gets worse that have become more like the norm. So because society doesn't know it's sick or mentally ill or whatever you want to call it, we just normalize the abnormal. But you see things that come in to a change blindness almost.
Yeah.
That when things change, you can see the change. And lots of people, when I was younger, it was never like this in my day because they could see the change, how it was getting worse. And so you can see that within change blindness is when you don't recognize the change. You just go along with it.
Yeah.
How do you feel after
Interested actually. I want to think about some of that stuff a bit more.
that? Okay, shall we end that?
Yeah.